Welcome to the Grateful American series, an interactive multimedia program designed to restore enthusiasm in American history for kids and adults too. Creator of this series is David Bruce Smith, an author and publisher here in Washington, D.C. I'm Katz Gibbs, your co-host, founder of Incandescent Public Relations and Incandescent TV. Hello and welcome to the Grateful American series. I'm Katz Gibbs, your co-host. This is David Bruce Smith, the founder of the Grateful American Foundation. We are here today with Andrew Jackson O'Shaughnessy at Monticello. Thank you so much for being part of our show.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me.
Before we get started, let's tell the audience a little bit about you. Andrew O'Shaughnessy is the Saunders Director of the Robert H. Smith International Center for Jefferson Studies here at Monticello. He's also a professor of history at the University of Virginia. And he is the author of An Empire Divided, The American Revolution and the British Caribbean, published in 2000. But his most recent work, which won the Washington Book Award, is The Men Who Lost America, British Leadership, the American Revolution, and the Fate of the Empire, which is now available. And we're very proud to be showing it here. This is actually the British version, and there's an American version, which David's holding up, and we'll talk more about that in our interview. And now we'll get started with some questions. David, do you want to start us off?
Andrew, how is it that you, born in Britain, are now devoting your life to an American president?
Well, I actually, when I was growing up, spent a lot of time in America from the age of 7. My father was teaching at Columbia University, and so I spent my early life divided between the two countries. I was entirely educated in Britain and arrived after a few years of working in Britain, but that was the source of my interest. I was particularly intrigued by the interplay between British and American history. The schools in Britain did not teach a lot about the history of the United States, and it's often what you're not taught at school which becomes an object of curiosity.
So why Jefferson and not, say, Washington?
Well, I initially became interested in the American Revolution, and as a result of a broader interest in the American Revolution, I started to think much more about the founders. My interest in Jefferson is partly because I think he was the most democratic of the presidents, and the person who most embraced the idea of government by the people.
That's amazing. So let's talk a little bit more let's start off actually by talking about your book.
Yes.
So tell us what inspired you to write this book and some of the interesting facets of it. So David, hold that up. So it looks like the two covers are different. This is the American version, which has your name, it has your middle name on it, and
Yes.
This is the British version. So tell us about the history of this history book.
Yes.
And why there are these nuances.
Well, this is all about the British side of the American Revolution, and I've wanted to write it for years. I can even remember as a child coming to America and being very disappointed that the films like 1776 didn't feature the British. The two books are different, the British version and the American version. I have to say it's only a difference in the cover. The title of the American version is British Leadership, the American Revolution and the Fate of the Empire, so just keep that in mind for a moment. Also, my name is different. They have Andrew Jackson O'Shaughnessy, which people of course associate with President Andrew Jackson. In the British version, they just have Andrew O'Shaughnessy because the British publisher was worried that they would think I was an American author. They have a slightly different subtitle. Instead of British Leadership, it's British Command, and the tone of that is different. Instead of the Fate of the Empire, it's the Preservation of the Empire. And then they have a very different angle on the painting. They've pulled back to show more of the painting, and you have what looks like a rugby scrum of redcoats, all looking triumphant.
So tell us a little bit more about your role here at Monticello. You're the vice president of Monticello. You're very active in the Robert H. Smith Center. Tell us, how long have you been here? How did you get here? And what do you do on a daily basis?
Well, I've been here 11 years, and my role is really to oversee the research campus. It's almost like a small college campus. It's 78 acres. We have a library here, which was the first library built to one of the founders, and that was built just before my arrival. Robert H. Smith was one of the sponsors for the library and indeed endowed the center a year after my arrival. In addition to the library, we edit the papers of Jefferson for his retirement period, and that is part of a massive and long-term project that started, believe it or not, the first volume was published in 1950 as part of a Princeton series.
You know, Jefferson's been called a gentleman, but he had a lot of feuds. He had a feud with Adams, he had a feud with Hamilton, Burr. He seemed to have dusted up a lot of people, more than, say, the other founding fathers. So how would you explain that?
Well, the founders all, many of them at some point fell out with each other. There were a lot of feuds, and not simply between Jefferson and the rest, but a lot of these were really ideological. And Jefferson had been very fond of John Adams. They were very close at the time of the writing of the Declaration of Independence. It was Adams who suggested that Jefferson be chosen to write the first draft of the Declaration of Independence. They became sworn enemies in the 1790s, but it was all about issues. In their retirement, they started writing to each other, and it's one of the great correspondences of all time. And of course, they died on the same day, 50 years after the Declaration of Independence, on the 4th of July, 1826, and Adams died saying Jefferson lives.
So regarding the arc of his presidency, how was he regarded when he died 20 years ago and now?
Well, he was still quite controversial when he died, although there was much public mourning because his death and John Adams really represented the passing of a generation. They were some of the last of the major founding figures who'd been in Philadelphia in 1776. His reputation, though, would go up and down in history. Curiously, it's not static. It probably reached its height immediately after the Second World War, and then he achieved an almost godlike status. And that really started to change with the civil rights movement in the 1960s. Much backlash against the fact that Jefferson had owned slaves. There's an African American who sits on the board of Monticello, Judge John Charles Thomas. He was the first African American to be part of the Supreme Court of Virginia, and he words it very well. He says, Jefferson was an imperfect man with a perfect ideal, that all men are created equal.
Thank you so much for being with us today,
Good.
Andrew. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Right, well, I hope some of that will work for you.
Yes. You're watching the Grateful American series, based on the Grateful American Foundation by David Bruce Smith. We're here today with Andrew Jackson O'Shaughnessy at Monticello. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us. You are watching the Grateful American TV show, a video production of David Bruce Smith's Grateful American Foundation. Watch more episodes at www.gratefulamericantv.com. And follow our TV show, radio show, monthly newsletter, and upcoming books at our website, www.gratefulamericantfoundation.com. I'm Hope Katz Gibbs, your co-host. On behalf of David Bruce Smith and myself, we look forward to restoring enthusiasm in American history for you and your kids. We'll talk to you soon.